In this video, I'll talk about how much I paid for an IVF cycle, how I paid for it, and share some ideas to reduce the cost of IVF. If you're new here, hi, I'm Juhi. I'm in my early 40s and currently 27 weeks pregnant. I've conceived through IVF, and luckily, my first egg retrieval and transfer has been successful so far. I've been sharing my IVF tips and experiences on this channel, so make sure to hit subscribe here and check out the other videos I've linked in the description below. One of the most frequently asked questions so far has been how much I paid for a single IVF cycle in New York City. Before I chose my clinic, I had shopped around quite a bit and I got quotes from 3 different clinics. On average, the base rate for a single IVF cycle was around $15,000. But here's the thing, I said base, not actual cost. As you probably know, there are many hidden and unexpected costs in IVF. Let's just start with the pre-IVF cost. To begin an IVF cycle, you need a consultation and a screening process. These are done to determine whether you need an IVF and to examine your fertility health, to make a prognosis, and to create a plan and protocol for your IVF procedure. And the expenses from this initial part are not usually included in the base cost of a single IVF cycle. Although these are relatively inexpensive and usually covered by insurance, some of the required screening tests, such as HSG or hysteroscopy, can be a bit costly, ranging from a couple of $100 to over $1,000 after the insurance. And if you have a history of recurrent miscarriage, or if you are at an advanced maternal age, let's say over 35 or 37, you are most likely to be recommended to do genetic testing, which is different than the PGTA test on embryos. And in most cases, this test is fully covered by the insurance. But if not, the out-of-pocket cost can be over $20,000. So if you are shopping around for a fertility clinic, make sure that you are not repeating the same genetic testing. That can cost you a lot of money. Lastly, there can be a handful of lab work that needs to be done at this initial stage, including a sperm analysis. These are usually not expensive, but they can add another couple of $100 to the bill. Also, if you need to go through additional screening or treatment, that will be an extra expense. It's not uncommon to find a uterine polyp or an ovarian cyst that needs to be removed before starting an IVF. I myself had to remove a uterine polyp through hysteroscopy to reduce the chance of miscarriage and increase the chance of implantation. To sum it up, at the consultation preparation stage, before starting an IVF cycle, you should expect that there will be an extra expense of at least $1,000 or more. Once you've completed the initial process, you can start your IVF treatment. If you are one of the lucky people with insurance that covers fertility treatment, you will be billed at each stage of the cycle and you don't have to pay anything upfront. If your insurance doesn't cover IVF, which is more common than not, you are required to pay the full amount for an IVF cycle all upfront. For this reason, most clinics offer fixed rate packages for self-paying patients. Now, let's dissect what's included in the basic package. To explain this, I need to remind you that an IVF cycle consists of 3 main parts. First, hormonal injections for up to 2 weeks to stimulate the ovary. Second, egg retrieval surgery at the end of the stimulation cycle. Third, monitoring the fertilization and development of your embryos. So a flat fee of $15,000 will cover all 3 parts. And yes, it covers all the monitoring visits, including ultrasound scan and blood draw, and consultations with the doctor and nurses during this period, no matter how many times you need them. In my case, I think I did about 10 monitoring visits during the 2-week period, which was quite a lot. Now, let's talk about what is not typically included in this flat rate. Medications, specifically hormonal injections, are not included. And this can cost anywhere between $1,000 to $5,000 per cycle, depending on how aggressive your protocol is and how long your stim cycle is. Secondly, anesthesia for the egg retrieval surgery is usually separate. In my clinic, the anesthesiologist charges $600 per cycle. After the retrieval, if you choose to freeze your embryos and store them, that's additional cost too. And if you opt for a PGTA testing on embryos, which stands for pre-implantation genetic testing, this is also an extra cost. Based on my experience, each clinic has a very different approach to charge for this test. So I can't really give you an average cost on this, but you should expect to spend at least a couple of thousands of dollars for a PGTA test. And of course, the frozen embryo transfer fee is separate, and on average, it costs around $5,000 per transfer in New York City. To sum it up, the additional cost can add up to quite a lot, oftentimes doubling the base package price. So my conclusion is that a single IVF cycle, including a retrieval and a transfer from the beginning to finish, can cost about 30 grand in New York City. Now, if you have a really constrained budget, here are some options to consider. Choosing a fresh transfer over frozen embryo transfer can save you a few $1,000s because it doesn't involve a freezing and thawing process nor the embryo PGTA testing. However, be mindful that statistically, a fresh embryo transfer has a lower chance of success than frozen embryo transfer. And it cannot be done if you have very elevated hormone levels right after the egg retrieval, which is likely if you have had a successful stimulation cycle. Another way to reduce the cost is to use less expensive medications or use less of them. I heard that certain brands of medications are more expensive than others. For example, Menopur and Gonal-F are the notoriously expensive ones. I heard that there are some alternatives to these drugs that some doctors actually prefer using. So if you have a really constrained budget, talk to your doctor to see if you can try less expensive medications. Also, you might not need a lot of medications if you have a low or diminished ovarian reserve and if you don't react to the medications very well. More medication does not always mean a better response. Lastly, anesthesia for the egg retrieval surgery can be optional, although I think most providers will highly recommend it for a smoother and painless egg retrieval surgery. But it is possible to skip it, it seems. I mean, if you really wanted to. I came across some people on YouTube who allegedly went through the egg retrieval without anesthesia. And of course, there are other ways to reduce the overall cost of IVF procedures by choosing some of the discounted packages, such as mini IVF, embryo banking, and a shared risk program. Let me compare these. The first one is mini IVF. As the name suggests, it's usually half the price of a full IVF because this program requires less monitoring visits and less medication. But from my understanding, it's only for certain people, especially those with a low or diminished ovarian reserve, who don't respond well to the medications and tend to produce fewer eggs. For them, it doesn't make sense to take more drugs than they can handle. With that said, considering the main goal of doing an IVF is to produce the maximum eggs per cycle, choosing this program just for the sake of reducing the cost will be counterproductive. So let's move on to the embryo banking program, which seems most popular. This program gives a discount for your commitment to do multiple rounds of egg retrievals. This program is ideal for people who want to produce more embryos, perhaps because they are determined to have more than one child. The base cost of the embryo banking program in my clinic is around $25,000. But of course, this isn't the actual cost. The package doesn't include medications, PGTA testing, an embryo transfer, and other expenses that I talked about earlier. So if you add all these up, the total cost can be anywhere between 40 to 50 grand from start to finish. Still, it's cheaper than doing a single cycle twice. And if your first embryo transfer fails, but you have more embryos available, you just need to pay an additional $5,000 each time you thaw and transfer a frozen embryo or embryos. So embryo banking does kind of give you an advantage with the numbers game for additional embryos. But this program does not guarantee anything. Now, if you are seeking a more guaranteed and safest option, like I did, a shared risk program is a great option. Although it has the highest base price and it comes with a caveat. To enroll in this program, you need to be under 41 and you have to have a normal ovarian reserve and overall good health, including a proper BMI. In my case, I was just 1 month away from being 41 when I signed the shared risk program. And honestly, the fact that I wouldn't be qualified to enroll in this program soon definitely affected my decision to go for it. Yep, they got me. So what does the program entail? Basically, under this program, the patient and clinic both share the risk. The clinic will offer up to 6 IVF cycles until the patient brings home a live baby. And if it all fails, the clinic will refund 100% of the upfront rate. As for the qualified patients, they are likely to take a risk of paying for more transfers or more IVF cycles than they will ever get to use or that they will ever need. So, how much is this program? Interestingly, the price varies depending on your age. At least that was the case in my clinic. If you are under 35 years old, the cost for the shared risk program is $30,500, plus medications and some initial costs, which can be about another $6,000 or more. So let's say it's around $37,000. If you are between 35 and 37, the package cost goes up to $34,800. So the total would be around 41 grand. And if you are between 38 and 40, which was my case, the flat rate is $36,800. So with medications and initial cost combined, the total cost is at least $43,000. Based on my calculations, this program did not cost more than the embryo banking program with a single transfer. Also, it did not cost more than a single IVF cycle with 3 frozen embryo transfers. Why? Here's the thing. What's unique about this program is that each cycle is fully featured with PGTA testing and unlimited frozen embryo transfers for a base price, unlike the other programs. Also, it comes with one great benefit that is not cost related. It offered a peace of mind. What I've learned on this journey is that IVF is not just a numbers game. It can be totally unpredictable and random. The reality is that you never know how your body will actually react to the medications, even after rounds of careful screenings and examinations of your fertility health. Biology is pretty unpredictable, it seems. Also, sometimes clinics can make mistakes and overlook the signs of premature ovulation, for example. This will lead to a complete cancellation of your cycle after you spend all the money, time, and energy giving yourself injections every day and every night. And if you have any complications like having an ovarian cyst, you never know how successful the egg retrieval process can go either. You might produce a lot of eggs, but the cyst can be in the way of collecting those eggs. And the chance of any of these happening in the IVF cycle is actually not that small. That's why I opted for a shared risk program instead of embryo banking. Under this program, I know that any mistakes that a clinic makes or any bad luck that I encounter will not affect me as much as they would in a non-guaranteed program. This gave me a great sense of relief, which I think to some degree eventually helped me succeed in the first place. I would have been way more stressed out if I didn't have any guarantee going through an IVF cycle. In the end, spending $30,000 versus $43,000 to me wasn't a huge difference. We were already committed to spending the money, and luckily we had sufficient funds. So our mindset was that if we succeed at the first attempt, then we would have spent $10,000 to $15,000 more than we needed, and that would be the worst part of it all. And we figured that's not bad at all, because if we have a healthy baby from this program, our goal is met, and that is pretty priceless. In fact, we were thinking if we succeed in the first attempt, it will be like giving the clinic a very generous bonus for being excellent. Through the shared risk program, just with one egg retrieval, we got 4 viable embryos to transfer, which was more than we ever hoped for. I am very grateful, and I strongly feel that taking the shared risk program definitely set me up for success. Now, finally, let me tell you how I paid for this expensive medical procedure. So there are 4 ways that I can think of to pay for the bill. I chose one of the options that I'm about to tell you. First, you have the cash in your savings or even a checking account. Then obviously you can use that cash. Second, most clinics offer a third-party financial aid, and their terms are kind of similar to auto loans. You can pay back up to 5 to 6 years or so with a moderate interest rate under 10%. The next option is that you have a 0% credit card with enough credit line. If you can pay back within 2 years, this can be a good option for you. Also, with a credit card, you can get some cash back on this expensive purchase. The last option I know is that you might be able to withdraw money from your retirement funds as a hardship distribution. Medical expenses such as IVF are qualified for the hardship distribution, and there will be no penalty for early withdrawal, except that you need to pay taxes on that money if it was a pre-tax. The good thing about this is that it can be the least disruptive option compared to taking a loan or even using cash, because this is the money you weren't gonna see until you retire anyway. So there you have it. IVF can be stressful, and I hope this video gives you some ideas on how to navigate this journey in a more calm and less stressful way. If you find this video helpful, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe for more. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video.